Good morning. I have here a later edition of the selected letters of Friedrich Nietzsche, translated by Ludovici. So it is commensurate with the Oscar Levy edition, but was published a bit later. This was first published in 1921. So there's some interesting material in here, obviously. I'm going to begin by selecting a letter written 160 years ago in February 1865, when Nietzsche was in Bonn, at Bonn University. Now, I've already covered Bonn University, his period there for a year, quite an unhappy year, called it his lost year. And this letter is written prior to him coming home from that university for a break, a holiday, and he writes to his mother and his sister. It's not a philosophical letter, but what it will do will give an indication of Nietzsche's background and life, which is really at odds with the distorted soft Nietzschean existentialist view of Nietzsche. So here we have Nietzsche, 20 years old, writing to his mother and sister from Bonn, and of course they are in Naumburg. So to begin, I will break in now and again with any elucidations on any points. Nietzsche to his mother and sister, Bonn, end of February 1865, Saturday. My dear Mama and Lizzie, the lovely time of the holidays draws ever nearer, and I must confess that my longing to see you again grows keener every day. You might shortly start making the preparations for my arrival, for I shall be with you soon after the middle of the next month. The more disagreeable the weather is now, the more do I like to dwell upon the beautiful days at Easter, and naturally I have never felt so happy at the thought of the holidays as I feel now. How delightful life will seem for me in your dear company, compared with the life I lead here, so destitute of all family associations. In addition to that, I shall be near so many dear friends and to dear old Pforta, to which we old Pforta boys are so absurdly attached. So just to add here that, of course, Pforta was the school, the prep school he went to between the ages of 14 and 20. He was obviously very productive there, and where he received the kind of very grueling public school, boarding school, boys only school, that grueling kind of education, disciplinarian, almost monkish. And he leaves there and goes to Bonn, the very year that we are seeing here in this letter. And he has all the freedom in the world at Bonn compared to Pforta, but is very unhappy at Bonn. And many of his friends from Pforta are obviously still dear friends to him. And we also note, of course, the tenderness and the love that he shows towards his sister and his mother, quite contrary to the usual caricature of that relationship. So I will go on. I imagine the whole of this passage will make you feel a little wistful, but unfortunately, I must dissipate this mood for you by referring to the inevitable and irksome question of money. And again, this is something we don't often hear about, that Nietzsche was actually quite paranoid about money. Among other things, now I'm going to the most desperate efforts to make two ends meet. And like the Treasury, on drawing up my budget for the year, I arrive only at the most hopeless results. Among the financial coup I have in view is a plan of moving out of my present lodgings next term, giving up the hire of the piano in order, to put it quite plainly, to cut down expenses. So here we see the level of poverty. Of course not, that the soft Nietzscheans will pretend that Nietzsche was living in. He might have to stop hiring a piano. Well, they must have been hard times for him, mustn't they? But this is not to denigrate Nietzsche. Nietzsche was a musician. And in those days, there were no recordings, sound recordings, obviously, tape recordings, nothing like that. If you were a musician, then you had a piano or an instrument and you played it and you read music. You were music literate, as Nietzsche was. One learns a tremendous lot in one term, even in the realm of material things. But it is a pity that one has to pay so dearly for these lessons. But now I will close these pathetic and pathetic details by begging you, dear Mama, to send me the money for the next 2 months in a lump sum of not less than 240 marks, to include my railway fare. Altogether, I am not in favour of monthly instalments. They inevitably lead one into debt. Up to the present, I have only been in a position to settle the most pressing debts of the previous month by means of these monthly instalments, and have scarcely ever had any cash in hand. Generally speaking, it is quite out of the question for me to hope to get on at Bonn on less than 1,200 marks. And that was the amount my guardian promised me at the beginning of my university life. And again, another point here, it's not annotated, but the guardian was, of course, a man, a legal man, a solicitor, friend of the family, who was appointed at the death of Nietzsche's father to look after Nietzsche's family affairs and his decisions in his early life. So here Nietzsche is referring to that guardian. And again, the distorters will tell you that there was no male influence on Nietzsche after the death of his father, that it was all female influence. Well, this is quite clearly poppycock. Not only did he go to Pforta between the ages of 14 and 20, which was all male boarding school, but he had a male guardian who controlled his finances and the decisions that he made, more or less. If you only knew how we live here, you would understand this. It is the minimum amount possible in the circumstances. Now, unfortunately, I haven't prepared properly for this reading. It's, as usual, a kind of impromptu reading, so I'm not sure of the equivalent value of 1,200 marks to today. But I think from the tone of this, we can guess that he is wanting to live at quite a high standard. And he is not only begging his mother to send him the money in lump sums, but he is actually demanding it with that kind of sense of entitlement of the noble. We have here a little noble of 20 years old. So now I have said all I had to say on this matter, although I know perfectly well that it will not please you any more than it pleases me. Why can't I settle all this direct with my guardian? These things spoil my beautiful letters. And now let me beg of you once more not to fail me and thus plunge me into difficulties from which I could and should have to extricate myself only by borrowing the money in some way. And now let me banish all care from your brow and chat pleasantly for a while. The things I have to tell you naturally accumulate more and more every day. I pass here among the students, etc., as something of an authority on music, and as a queer customer into the bargain, like all old Porter boys are in the Franconia. The Franconia, as we've mentioned in the essay, on the video on Nietzsche's Lost Year, that was the student association of Bonn University that Nietzsche joined in all hope, but found it to be actually a boozing and wenching club. So he there was seen as what he says here as a queer customer, like all those from Porter. So obviously those from Porter were very disciplined type of students who found themselves slightly out of sync with the Franconia boys at Bonn. He goes on, I am not disliked at all, though I am apt to scoff a little and am considered as somewhat ironical. Again, it's an interesting quality, isn't it, that irony is something of a sophisticated European quality, more associated with French and even English letters, something not so much associated with the Germanic cast of mind, to put it in that sense. This estimate of my character, according to the opinions of other people, will not be without interest to you. For my part, I must add that I do not agree to the first particular, that I am frequently unhappy and that I have too many moods, and I am rather inclined to be a nagging spirit, not only to myself, but also to others. And now, goodbye. For heaven's sake, send me the money in good time, and remember me to our dear relatives. With hearty thanks for your nice letters, and begging you still to think kindly of me in spite of this one. Friedrich William Nietzsche. So it ends off with, for heaven's sake, send me the money in good time. So this is a very different Nietzsche to the one presented by the soft Nietzscheans. And therefore it will be interesting to go through various of these letters sporadically